Once the structure of the bubble is seen, and once that sight is extended to the bubbles of the others, the world undergoes a second profound transformation. It is no longer a battleground of competing truths, nor is it merely a collection of separate, isolated spheres. It becomes something else entirely, a library, a vast, living, breathing library of philosophies. Every religion, every spiritual path, every political ideology, every scientific paradigm, every cultural tradition reveals itself as a distinct wing of this library. Each is a grand self-referential volume, complete with its own origin story, its own cosmology, its own ethical codex, its own heroes and villains, its own promised lands, and its own visions of hell. They are not merely beliefs, they are complete narrative ecosystems, artifacts of the human spiral crafted over centuries, even millennia. This episode is an invitation not to conversion, but to conscience-curious exploration, to walk the halls of this library, not as a pilgrim seeking the one true book, but as a scholar of the human condition. The aim is not to find a new home, but to understand the architecture of different homes, to study the internal logic of each bubble, to see how it holds itself together, and most importantly, to understand the deep human needs it was built to fulfill. The need for meaning, for order, for belonging, for explanation in the face of mystery, for comfort in the face of suffering. This is a shift from living inside a story to studying stories as phenomena. We can pick up the Bhagavad Gita and appreciate its sublime dialogue on duty and detachment without needing to believe in Krishna's chariot. We can study the intricate logic of Marxist dialectical materialism without signing up for the party. We can sit in Zen meditation to experience the discipline of the mind without necessarily adopting the robes. We can marvel at the cosmological insights of the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, understanding them as a profound map of relationship to land, not as a competing theory to astrophysics. The magic cultivated here is not knowledge for its own sake. It is discernment. It is the critical yet respectful ability to extract wisdom without swallowing dogma. It is learning to appreciate a metaphor for its beauty and its insight without ever mistaking the pointing finger or the moon it indicates. It is the skill of listening to an ancient myth and hearing the psychological truth it encodes about the human journey, rather than arguing over its historical factuality. This discernment is the immune system of the awakening mind, allowing it to interface with powerful ideas without being captured by them. In this library, we become conscious tourists in the multiverse of human belief. We can visit, appreciate, learn the local customs, even feel a temporary sense of belonging, all the while knowing we carry our own passport. We are free to leave. This freedom transforms learning from an act of belief into an act of creation, as we begin to weave threads from different tapestries into our own understanding. This approach of studying beliefs as systems, as responses to the human predicament, has a rich lineage. It is the heart of comparative religion and the philosophy of religion. Scholars like Mircea Eliade spent lifetimes cataloging the patterns of the sacred across cultures, showing how myth and rituals are not primitive mistakes, but symbolic systems for connecting with a perceived transcendent reality. He helped create a framework where we could see the library's cataloging system, noticing that every wing has a section on creation, on death, on morality, on salvation, each just written in a different dialect of symbols. The ancient masters, those masters librarians of the soul, often encoded this very invitation within their own traditions. They hinted that their path was not the only shelf in the library. The Baha'i Faith, a found in the 19th century, is built upon the explicit principle of progressive revelation. It teaches that God has sent a series of divine educators, including Krishna, Buddha, Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Baha'u'llah, each suited to the needs of their time and culture. From this vantage point, the world's great religions are not competitors, but successive chapters in a single unfolding book of divine education. It is a theological framework that validates the entire library. Centuries earlier, the Mughal Emperor Akbar in 16th century India held the Ibadat Khana, house of worship. Debates where scholars of Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, and even atheists were invited to discuss theology and philosophy while seeking a synthesis. His efforts fundamentally recognized the value and logic in multiple bubbles, attempting a dialogue few libraries had ever hosted. In the Greco-Roman world, the philosopher, Syncretism was a common approach. Figures like Plotinus, the founder of Neoplatonism, wove together threads from Plato, Aristotle, Stoicism, and Eastern mysticism into a coherent philosophical system. They acted as early integrators, believing the truth was one, but expressed in many ways across the library. Perhaps the most elegant master of this was Jalaluddin Rumi, a devout Muslim theologian. His poetry is a tapestry woven into the threads from Christian, Zoroaster, and Greek thought, not as heresy, but as a testament to the universal longing that all bubbles attempt to address. He writes, "The lamps are different, but the light is the same." He directs attention not to the lamp, the specific religious form, the bubble, but to the light, the conscious awareness within that all lamps seek to illuminate. He gives us permission to appreciate every lamp in the library for the quality of its light. This exploration phase is crucial for one reason. It prevents the swapping of dogmas. It prevents us from leaving the rigid bubble of our childhood only to lock ourselves in the equally rigid bubble of a single alternative system. It inoculates us against gurus and ideologies that demand exclusive adherence. By seeing many systems, we see the patterns that define a system itself. The need for authority, for myth, for ritual, for in-groups and out-groups. The meta pattern recognition allows us to hold any single system more lightly. In this library, we also confront the limits of language and concept. We see that the Taoists call the ultimate mystery the Tao, which cannot be named. The Hindus call it Brahman, beyond attributes, Nirguna. The Muslims speak of Allah's essence being beyond comprehension. The mystics of every tradition point to a direct, non-conceptual experience that their bubbles attempt and ultimately fail to fully describe. The library, in its glorious diversity, points to a single silent reading from that exists beyond all books. So we explore. We read the Vedas, the mind of a poet, the neuroscience papers within the mind of a mystic. We see the passionate certainty of the political activist as a form of faith, and a devout prayer as a form of focused intention. Nothing is rejected out of hand. Everything is considered as data, as a manifestation of the human spirit attempt to make sense of this startling existence. And slowly, without even trying, an integration begins. Not a forced synthesis, but a natural assimilation. Insights from cognitive behavioral therapy might illuminate a Buddhist sutra. A concept from a quantum physics might give new depth to an old mystical claim about the nature of reality. The library's wisdom starts to cross-pollinate within us. We are no longer citizens of a single bubble. We become stewards of the library itself, understanding that each book, each wing, is a precious and necessary part of the collective human story. We are not just reading the books, we are learning the language in which they are all secretly written.